Welcome to our Paying for College presentation. I'm Candace Powell-Kynard, Financial Aid Consultant and Newcastle County Coordinator for Stand By Me. Stand By Me is a joint project of the State of Delaware and the United Way of Delaware. Our programs are made possible thanks to the support of funders and partners who all understand that financial health is vital to the well-being of all Delawareans. For more information on Stand By Me, please visit our website, standbymede.org. That's standbymede, like Delaware.org. Our focus today will be more on federal student aid and the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Please be aware that this presentation will have state funding information focused on the state of Delaware. If you're not a resident of Delaware, seek out the information for your state by reviewing your state's higher education website. For details on specific funding from colleges and universities, be sure to visit each individual college's website to get the full details on all the forms and procedures required by those colleges for financial aid and scholarships. All right, let's get started. So what do you want to know? What are we going to talk about today? The funding that's available, the types of funding that are available, how you apply for it, when you apply for it, and what else you need to know. So the first thing is how much money is available. And the good news is that financial aid can be enough to cover the full cost of attendance if needed. So let's talk about what the cost of attendance looks like. So the elements that make up the cost of attendance are the ones that you see here on the screen, but we like to use a little nickname for the cost of attendance, and that is the sticker price. So the sticker price is very similar language to the car dealership, right? So you walk on a car dealership, you're looking at the different cars, and all the cars have a sticker right on the window that tells you the full cost of that car, as well as all the details as a part of the car. So now the sticker price for any college or university, you can find that on their website. So what makes up the cost of attendance? So tuition is the first thing that you see, and tuition is your seat in a class, your ability to take a course, and then you pay for that course. That's tuition. Now, fees can vary from college to college. It can be as small as $50, as high as several thousand, but they cover the cost for things like the health center fee, or a parking pass fee, or maybe the computer lab fee. Books and supplies sound self-explanatory, and it is. Books you're paying for the books that are needed in any particular class, and supplies you are buying for their studying or anything that helped you to be successful. Now, supplies actually can vary by your major, and so your art major might have to buy paints and canvases, where the engineering major might have to buy hardware or computer software. All right, so room and board is next. And room, of course, is you staying on campus and living in a room on campus. And board is kind of the old-fashioned word that's meant to describe all the fees associated with living on campus. Primarily, you will see colleges describe their meal plan. And there may be a variety of options for meal plans so that students can eat while they're on campus. Transportation is something that families typically leave out of their budget. They forget to put this into their budget, but transportation is an important cost in the cost of attendance. And so transportation, if you're going to live on campus, but you're from further away, then you might have to pay for planes, trains, automobiles, right, to get back and forth to campus. Now, even if you're going locally, you should still consider the cost of commuting back and forth to campus. So that could include a train or a bus, or maybe gas for a car. But you do need to factor in transportation costs, particularly because colleges close a couple times a year. They may close for breaks and holidays, and you won't be able to stay on campus, so you'll have to transport yourself someplace else. Now, clothing, outside of being legal, is also something that can be covered by financial aid, and we'll actually show you that a little later. Miscellaneous personal expenses can include things that you need to have while on campus as you would if you were at home. They can include your eyeglasses or contacts if you have them, maybe some medications that you need. If you have equipment that assists you in your education, then maybe that's a cost that you need to cover. Also things, if you're going to stay on campus, the typical things like toothpaste and shampoo, sheets and towels, these would also be a part of some of those miscellaneous personal expenses. Now, one thing to note that there is no government agency or entity that tells the colleges how much they should price themselves. So they actually determine that themselves. And any financial aid that you get cannot exceed the cost of attendance. So you can't get more in aid than it actually costs to go there. All right. Now, the sticker price or the cost of attendance is this chart in particular is made up of some research that was done. And so the sticker price may not be what the family is paying to go to that particular college. You may actually be paying the net cost. Well, why is that? Because of the availability of scholarships and grants, it's possible that the wide majority of families are not going to pay the full sticker price that you see on the website, but the net cost instead. And that's made up of a sticker price minus the grants and scholarships, and then that would equal the net cost. So you wouldn't necessarily be paying the full sticker price. It's highly likely that you'll be paying the net cost. So that's good information to have. Now, there are several ways that you can pay for college, and there are several types of aid that are available. And so I like to get you to imagine that you have these pots of gold that you can dip into. And so the largest pot of gold, if you will, or the largest amount of money that you can get is from the college itself. The second largest pot of gold that you can dip into is the federal government. And the third largest amount of money that you can tap into is from the state in which you live. And then the fourth largest dollar amount that you can tap into would be private scholarships. So those would be scholarships from community organizations or civic organizations that would be outside of the college or the university. So let's look at this a little further and break these categories down further. And let's start with scholarships and grants. So because scholarships and grants are not typically something that you're going to pay back or that you have to pay interest on, we call it the free money. You don't have to pay it back. Now, for scholarships, you do need to do some research and find out how you apply for them, when you apply for them. You absolutely need to meet the deadline. You don't want to miss deadlines, and you absolutely have to follow the instructions. Now, need-based federal and state grants may also be available for students with high need. And need actually means that a family has used one of the applications that helps them to determine need, which would be primarily the FAFSA application, the free application for federal student aid. And that helps the university to determine what the financial picture is for any given family. And that would determine how much you actually need or what your need is, right? So there are scholarships that are need-based. They may actually ask for information from the FAFSA, and there are certainly grants, federal and state grants that are showing the need or they're need-based, and then the student would have to determine their need to figure out whether or not you're eligible. Now, how well you do in school does make a difference. All scholarships are not based on a student having a perfect A average or a 4.0 GPA, but the scholarships that you have access to could be expanded by how well you do in school. So doing well does make a difference. Now, reading what we call the fine print or the instructions is really, really important, particularly, for example, in determining the difference between a first or one-time scholarship and a renewable scholarship. That's a really good example. So a scholarship that's one time would just be given to you maybe that 1 year, where a renewable scholarship could be given to you in multiple years or subsequent years. And in order to renew your scholarship for a renewable scholarship, there may be some instructions or some eligibility requirements that you have to fulfill. So you may have to keep your grade point average up, or your GPA may have to be at a certain level, as well as your requirements that they may give for maybe community service. So those would be two good examples of things that you will have to fulfill in order to keep your renewable scholarship. Now, federal work study, again, is a federal student aid program, and this is where the student would be working while studying. So it's typically part-time, typically minimum wage, and generally speaking, the student would work a job on campus and they would get paid for their work like any other job. Now, work study jobs pay you your wage or whatever you've earned, and then you make the decision what you'd like to do with the money. You do not have to take your work study money and then say pay your college bill with it. Now, you could if you wanted to, and that might be helpful, but you're not required to do that. So this, because it's money that you are receiving for a job that you've worked, and you spend this money, this is where you can cover some of your miscellaneous personal expenses. And when you're completing the FAFSA application, there is a question about work study on the application. We typically recommend that you do indicate yes, that you'd like to receive the information or that you're interested in work study. You read up a little bit more about it with the campus. We'll send you the information, you'll read it, and then you'll make the decision as to whether you want to do work study. Okay, loans. You've probably no doubt heard all kinds of information about loans in the news, but loans are simply financial aid that you borrow and that you must pay back plus interest. Now, students can borrow loans in their name. Parents can borrow loans in the parent's name, and all can go to contribute to the student's cost of attendance. Now, we highly recommend that you borrow federal loans first, because of the flexibility of the repayment options that are available, and it typically can keep the cost down. It may be more beneficial for a family to really consider federal student loans first, as opposed to private or bank or financial institution loans that could be less flexible or a little bit more expensive. Again, you should only borrow what you need to fill a small gap. We don't recommend that you go out and get loans to cover the whole sticker price. That would be extremely expensive. All right, now we see a summary of all the federal student aid programs. Just gives you a snapshot of what's available from federal student aid. And you see the grants are listed here, and the federal Pell Grant is one of the grants that everyone is trying to get their hands on. That grant this year is $6,495 at max. If you are eligible for the maximum Pell Grant, you would get that maximum. If you're not eligible for the maximum, you could still be eligible for a Pell Grant, but you just wouldn't get the maximum. So maybe you would get $3,000 or $4,000. It completely depends on the results of your FAFSA application. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is also for students who have need. The SEOG can range from $1,000 to $4,000, and the amount that you would be awarded completely depends on your need as a result of the FAFSA application. The TEACH grant, Teacher Education Assistance for College and Higher Education grant, again, is a grant, does not have to be paid back. It is for students who are interested in a career as a teacher. There is a focus of teaching in areas of the country that are underserved, and focusing on teaching STEM classes, so math and science type classes. So we talked about employment, we talked about your federal student aid federal work study program, and then also loans. So this tells a little bit more of the details of the differences between the student and the parent's loan. So starting with the student loans, there are two different types of federal student aid student loans. And so the direct subsidized loan is one, and the direct unsubsidized loan is the other. So what's the difference? The direct subsidized loan, the student borrows in their name. They do pay it back plus interest after they leave school or graduate from school. However, while in school, that loan's interest is covered on the student's behalf while they're in college. The direct unsubsidized loan, however, is a little different in that the interest is not covered for the student while they are in college. The student is responsible for paying that interest while in college. And how can you tell the difference? Well, unsubsidized starts with the letter U, meaning you pay the interest while in college. Now, you can request that the interest not that the student not pay the interest while in college, and the interest, however, does continue to accrue or accumulate over time. Parents have access to a loan in the direct plus loan program. So this would be a loan where the parents are borrowing the money in their own name, but on behalf of the student. So the parent borrows the money in their name and they pay the student's bill or the gap in their bill. So the parent can borrow up to the cost of the attendance. So the cost of attendance, the student can, the parent can borrow that money right up to that cost, meaning it can be really beneficial to have a Parent Plus loan in that you can cover all of the bills. However, hopefully the student has benefited from multiple scholarships and a grant or two so that the gap that you have is not very, very large. Now, the Parent Plus loan is a credit-worthy loan, and so the parent's creditworthiness does make a difference, but the parent can also request that their payments be paused until an agreed upon time. So the parent can actually pause payments to help them out financially. So the Plus loan, once it's dispersed to the campus, 3 months after that, the parent would then begin making payments, or they would request that those payments get paused until an agreed upon. So Delaware, the state of Delaware, has its own programs to help students pay for college. And the first one is a very popular scholarship called the SEED Scholarship. The SEED Scholarship can actually pay for the tuition for 2 full years, making college very affordable, or in most cases free, for the student to attend. Now, this is for an associate's degree. So the student could choose to have an associate's degree at Del Tech Community College, or at the University of Delaware Associate in Arts program. So again, the SEED Scholarship could pay for the tuition at either of those institutions for an associate's degree only. The student coming out of high school would need to have a 2.5 GPA and not have any felonies in their name. They have to be a Delaware resident and they can benefit from the SEED Scholarship. Now, at Delaware State University, there is also a fantastic opportunity called the Inspire Scholarship. The Inspire Scholarship can now pay for full tuition for students who are interested in going to Del State. Now, Delaware also offers merit-based scholarships. There's a Memorial Scholarship and Diamond State Scholarships. Both of those scholarships require students to have a certain GPA as well as a certain SAT score. The incentive scholarship, it's actually a grant, we call it the SKIP grant, the Scholarship Incentive Program. That is a need-based program. The student would submit their FAFSA application and they would be designated as a need or high need student, and the state of Delaware could then also help them pay for school through the SKIP grant program. Now, all of this information about Delaware money or any funds to help pay for college through the state of Delaware can be accessed on Delaware's website for all things college and higher education. And that website, you see that on the screen here, is DelawareStudentSuccess.org. Now, to qualify and to apply for these programs, one step is that the student will need to complete the FAFSA application by April 15th of the year. For us, it will be the spring. And they also need to create a student account. And the student account is actually a very quick process, doesn't take very long, but it helps the state to be in contact with the student. So all of your contact information would be listed in that account, and that's how the state stays in contact with you about the opportunities. Again, DelawareStudentSuccess.org. In this case, /state aid is how you would read more about those particular programs. Now, who's eligible for federal student aid? Well, students do have to be U.S. citizens. You do have to be pursuing a degree or a certificate and at least going part-time, or what's here listed as half-time. And eventually you do have to have graduated from high school or the equivalent. Now, students who do not have citizenship in the United States would not qualify for federal student aid, but they can potentially qualify for things that are offered by the colleges and universities. One such program is the Dream US Scholarship, which is hosted at Delaware State University. That is a national scholarship, and students who are not United States citizens, actually do still qualify for the Dream Scholarship. Now, students who are Delaware residents, yet may not be US citizens, they actually can still take advantage of the SEED program. So they can be SEED scholarship recipients. So just keep in mind that if you're not a US citizen, it doesn't mean you can't qualify for everything. It just means that you will not get anything that has the requirement of you being a US citizen, like federal student aid. All right, so now how do we apply for all of this really good money? So at minimum, we're going to complete the free application for federal student aid. And notice that the first word in the application is free, meaning that there is no application fee for this application. There could be additional forms that you may have to complete. Some colleges have a variety of different financial aid forms that they may ask you to complete, but everyone needs to complete the FAFSA application. So here's just a sneak peek at what the application's website homepage looks like. And here are some details. So the free application for federal student aid is really how this whole thing starts. All colleges, for the most part, require the FAFSA application. It does have to be completed every year that you are interested in receiving financial aid for college. There is an app that is pretty handy. It works the same, for example, as the website. So the FAFSA is an online website, an online application. And the app also works the same way. It's actually handy to have that. So for this year, for students who are interested in attending college in the fall of 2022, need to complete the 2022-2023 FAFSA application. Now, the application opens up every October 1st of each year, and students will need to work with their family, work with their parents to have access to their income and assets from the year 2020. So any student that's a high school student, you'll be graduating in the spring of your high school year, the spring of your senior year, and then you would be attending college in fall of 2022. So that's how you'll know which application you should be completing. And then the income and asset information should come from the tax information from the year 2020. Now, the FAFSA application has some standards in that there's specific things that it does and specific things that it does not do. So keep in mind, it's an application. It's not a place. It's not, a set of people that make decisions. It's an application or a tool that is used by the colleges and universities and possibly others to make decisions around financial aid. So what it does do is it does help to determine the student's eligibility as a tool, and it does help to gather the family's income and assets into one application so that the colleges can make some decisions. And again, it has to be submitted every year. It does not, however, collect information about household expenses like consumer debt, credit cards, things like that. It does not determine what specific aid will be awarded. The financial aid office at the various colleges and universities will do that. It does not determine how much aid will be determined. Again, the financial aid office does that. And it is not a loan application. Now, if you want any kind of federal student aid, you do have to complete a FAFSA. However, if you want a student loan, you'll have to actually complete an actual loan application or the master promissory note if you're interested in borrowing money. Now, what is the expected family contribution? Well, this is actually one of the results of completing the FAFSA. You'll hear it referred to as the EFC more often than spelling it all out. It is quite possible that under some new legislation, this will change a little bit. It will now become the SAI, but that's probably predicted to be 2023 before you'll see those changes. But I just wanted to alert you to the fact that some changes are coming down the horizon. So this is what the FAFSA, or federal student aid, will estimate that the family should be able to contribute. It is not, however, something you're going to be billed. So your expected family contribution is not a dollar for dollar amount. It's more used as an index to help determine the student's need. And that's exactly how colleges and universities use it. They use the results of the FAFSA, which is a number that will be generated called the EFC, and that helps them to determine whether or not the student has need. Now, completing the FAFSA, here's a quick checklist of what that looks like. So you'll go online to the studentaid.gov website. You'll look specifically for the FAFSA, which you can also access at fafsa.gov. You'll click Start Here if you're a new user. If you're returning, if you've already started it or you've filled it out a previous year, then you might actually click Log In. But if you're a new user, you're going to click Start Here. And then you're going to look for, if you're a high school senior or if you are a college student applying for your next year of college, you're going to select the 2022-2023 FAFSA to get started so that you can get funded for the year that starts, the academic year that starts in 2022. You're going to create the FAFSA, fill it all in, and then submit it. And then the colleges and universities that you list on the FAFSA will have access to that information, and they can begin making decisions after you've been accepted to that university. Now, here's the information that you're going to need to complete the FAFSA. You may have all of these items, or for your particular family, you may not have some of these items, but here are the things that you really should be prepared to have available. The student social security number is a must. You really can't move through the application without it. The parent should have their social security number if they have one. If the parent does not have one, then you would not be listing that on the application. If a student has a driver's license, then they should gather that information. If the student is a resident alien of the United States and not a citizen, but a resident alien, they should gather their information from their ID cards. The federal tax information is your 1040 and your W-2 information from your employer. That helps you to accurately list your income. And then if the student has access to any of the other assets, investments, checking savings account, if there is any child support in the family that is being exchanged, and that information should be gathered as well. And these things will help you to accurately complete the FAFSA application. So a couple of things that you should know is inside the FAFSA application, there is a tool called the data retrieval tool. This allows a family to approve the IRS to send their income information from their taxes into the FAFSA application automatically. It will transfer that information electronically. It actually doesn't take that long, takes 5 or 6 minutes to make all that happen, but it can be very, very convenient to keep you from needing to enter all of your tax information manually. Now, most families do have access to what we call the DRT, or the data retrieval tool, and it is very, very handy tool to use. The nice part also is that colleges and universities trust the information that came directly from the IRS, and therefore they will not likely ask you additional questions or additional verification questions. Now, keep in mind, you still need the information from your 2020 taxes, the 1040 in particular, possibly the additional schedule sheets, and the W-2 from the employer. Okay, so the DRT is pulling that specific information. And again, you'll see here that if you need additional information, or you get stuck and need to talk to customer service, you can utilize the telephone number there for Federal Student Aid Customer Service, 800 for Fed Aid, or you can contact us at Stand By Me with questions that you have at 800-560-3372. All right, so the results of the FAFSA, in addition to the EFC, you will also receive a student aid report. So once the FAFSA has been processed, you will receive what I like to call almost a carbon copy of your application. So you'll see the questions that were asked, and then you'll see the answers that you provided. And the student aid report does allow you to double check that your answers are accurate, or they are represented the way you want them, and that it also gives you an opportunity to make any corrections or updates. Now, you can log in and log into the FAFSA and make corrections that way, but you can also make corrections using the student aid report that you've been sent. So let's talk specifically about how the parents interact with their information on the FAFSA. And so for this particular determination, we have to determine how the student is supported at home. Are they supported by a parent or parents? Therefore, they would be dependent on those parents for their financial support, or are they independent, meaning they are not being supported by parents? So if the student is independent, they are meeting the eligibility requirements that you see here. So for example, the student needs to be over 24, if they have their own children, if they have other people relying on them for their financial support, they have dependents, if they've experienced homelessness or foster care, these can all be things that would make the student independent of their parents. Now, which parent actually should list their information on the FAFSA? Well, Federal Student Aid refers to those parents as the legal parent. So a legal parent is a biological parent or a parent that has adopted the student. So if you're a biological or adoptive parent, you will be the parents that will add your information to the student's FAFSA form. Now, we know that families are made up of all different types of family members, and so you may be supported as a student, you may be supported by a grandparent or aunts, uncles, cousins. While we love those family members, they are not required to put their income information on the FAFSA. It's only the biological or adoptive parent. Now, Do both parents or just one parent put their information on the form? Which parents put their information on the FAFSA form? So if there are two parents and they are living together, then both of those parents will add their information to the FAFSA form. If the parents are not living together, right, legal parent, biological or adoptive, then the information will only be provided by the custodial parent or the parent that is living with and primarily responsible for the student. Now, if parents are divorced or separated, then again, the custodial parent that is responsible for the student is the one who is taking care of the student. They're the one that's putting this their information on the form. In cases of shared custody, it would be the parent who has the student the majority of the time in a 12-month time period. So kind of 51% of the support that that parent is giving, that's the parent that would be considered to put their information on the FAFSA. Now, what if the student doesn't live with the parent? Then again, it may be a specific circumstance. Maybe the student is not supported by their biological parent. Maybe the parent's whereabouts are unknown. Maybe there is an issue where the student is not having contact with a parent. So these special circumstances can all be handled by the college's financial aid office. So you would reach out to the financial aid office of your top college or your top two colleges, explain the situation and allow them to give you the details and the instructions of what they would like you to do next. All right, when you are doing the FAFSA form and you're completing it, you really will first need to establish an account, and you'll need the ability to sign the application electronically, and that's what the FSA ID is. So the FSA ID, or simply known as a username and password, will be needed by both the student and the parent. The student needs their FSA ID because they're the ones who are opening up the account. They are the applicant. The parent will need a username and password, FSA ID, to sign the student's application at the end. So if it was a paper application, the parent would take out their pen and they would put their signature on the parent signature line, right? But since it's an electronic application, they're going to sign it electronically using their username and password. Now, a parent's and student's username and password can also be used to access the data retrieval tool, which allows the IRS to automatically transfer the information into the FAFSA form. But both the username and password of the parent and the student are both needed. Now, when do we get this application started? So the application becomes available every October. So October 1st of every year, you will be able to start completing the FAFSA application. And once again, for this year, if you are a high school senior or you're a college student looking to return back to school, you are looking to apply using the 2022-2023 FAFSA application. And once again, don't forget you'll need your 2020 income tax information. So that was a lot of information. We really hope that you benefited from this information. Again, keep in mind that financial aid is available, but you have to apply for it. And your journey really does start. This whole process really does start with the free application for federal student aid. If there is any way that we can be of assistance to you, please do reach out to us by visiting our website, standbymede.org. Thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful day.